Folks, I think we're live. If you can hear us, then post in the comments saying that you can hear us, because honestly I'm using a new camera with a built-in mic, so I've got no idea. Can you hear me clearly? Is the volume okay? Lucy, say something.
Hi.
So some of you asked if Lucy would be here, and she is. So this is, you know, I wasn't actually planning to do a live stream, and then I said,
they hear us.
and then I said to Lucy, you know, we're not really doing anything for New Year's. Why don't we do a live stream? So I thought, I haven't done a live stream for a while, so I looked on the channel to see when the last time I did a live stream was. And it was this time last year. So I apologise for not having done any live streams.
But it is now a tradition. So now we're locked
God.
in to every year, continuing to not go places at New Year's Eve.
Yay, the volume's good. Okay, so if the volume's good for you, great. If it's a little bit quiet, turn the volume up. I can adjust it at this end, but hopefully it's good enough for most of you. I'll show you. It's on the stream settings. And
that's
you go,
exciting.
oh, I can't find it now. Anyway, oh no, maybe it's on, yeah, it's here on OBS. Anyway, right, so this doesn't seem too rambly. First of all, I want to say, you are welcome to ask any questions you like in the comments. I won't promise to answer any question in the comments, but you are welcome to
Can they
ask
be PG questions?
Contrary to what some people believe, I'm a strong believer in freedom of speech, so you go for it, okay? Full freedom of speech in the comments. You ask what you like. You can even insult me. I don't care. Okay, I've got very thick skin. I don't care though. But you can ask whatever you like. However, to keep some structure and so that you know what you're getting into when you invest in this live stream, and I'll try not to keep it too long.
He's got notes.
I've got 5 things that I want to talk about. Okay, so whether you're wondering, am I going to be interested in this live stream? I will touch upon small swords with particular reference to Ilya from That Works. Okay, I'm also going to talk about Smatchet. I'm also going to talk about the survival of the Messer. What does Matt mean by that? Hang around and find out. I'm also going to talk about BJJ, which is British Jiu-Jitsu? No, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, okay, which mostly Lucy wants to talk about, but more about that in the future. And finally, I'll talk briefly about archery in reference to me, okay? Nice. So if you're interested in Ilya from That Works and Small Swords, or Smatchets, or Messers, or BJJ, or archery.
We've got Happy New Year from Brazil in the comments, so I'm very happy now.
Which is where Jiu-Jitsu comes from, I've learned.
It's where Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu comes from.
But yeah, if you have a particular interest in any of those things, get posting in the comments. Let us know what your particular knowledge, background, relationship with those subjects is. But in addition to that, you're welcome to ask any other questions. And if I think it's something I can give an even remotely interesting answer to, then I will try to do so in the time.
We've already got a question about Smatchets. Would you like to wait for the Smatchets section?
Let's wait for this. Make a note of that. Lucy's got a notepad and a pen. We've come fully, after doing this for about 10 years, we finally got a bit organised. Right, okay, so I'm going to start off as the questions and comments accumulate down there. Let's just see. We've got 100 of you online,
Yay!
So thank you for joining us. I know this was incredibly short notice. It's just a spur of the moment thing. I'll try to do some more pre-planned live streams in 2026. Right, before I touch on the subject, briefly, let's get something out of the way. It's the end of 2025. I know that this year has been absolutely rubbish. I'm going to moderate my language. For lots of you, and I know it's been tough. I really, really hope, I won't comment on how optimistic I am, but I really hope that 2026 is going to be a better year, okay? So, Happy New Year to all of us. Fingers crossed, we're going to need it, folks.
No, I'm optimistic about next year. Next year can't be worse than this year.
Oh, that's what we said in 2024, 23, 22,
no, man,
21.
This time.
I see, it feels like the world has got worse and worse since about 2015. But anyway, hopefully this will be the turning of the tide. This is when Gandalf will come over that hill with the Riders of Rohan to rescue us all.
Someone's asked who's watching Stranger Things later. We're well in that team.
So we're probably not going to stay up to watch it because it comes at 1 o'clock in the morning here. And frankly, we quite like going to bed and sleeping. So we'll be watching it tomorrow, basically.
But we're very excited.
We are Stranger Things fans.
Yeah.
I'm also excited about Fallout's new season.
Has that been released?
I think it has just come out. But because we've been watching some other things, we haven't got round to some new things.
World's Strongest Man has been on, so
I also remembered the other day we still haven't watched the final season of Umbrella Academy, which we both enjoyed. But anyway, so there's on World's Strongest Man, we've been enjoying that.
Who else likes World's Strongest Man? I love World's Strongest Man. Not enough people talk about World's Strongest Man.
Do you know a strong man? Have you ever met a strong man? Get commenting down below. Really interested to know. Right, okay, so...
what do you want to say about small swords?
Yeah, so I just to finish up. So Happy New Year, and you know I won't be too, you know, I won't get political or anything like that. But hopefully 2026 might be a bit better than 2025.
We're optimistic.
We're holding out for
good.
2026. We are going to drink our whiskey and coke and our
I've got a light beer.
Other beverages.
Pretty cool.
And hope for the best.
We had a super chat. Thank you very much to Garen Brooks. They would like to know, why do you think that despite repeating firearms existing for decades by the US Civil War, both the Union and Confederacy chose to fight primarily with single-shot Napoleonic-style muskets and rifles?
I would say there are many factors, but the two most important factors are economy and reliability. So I'm lucky to be friends with lots of people who are more knowledgeable about historical firearms than me. For example, Jonathan Ferguson and various other people. And I've watched actually a number of videos on this topic and read books about it. And generally speaking, despite the fact, for example, the Henry rifle did exist from 1860 onwards, basically they were too unreliable for massed use for standard infantry or cavalry. But secondly, they were really expensive. And the fact is that muzzle loading muskets were tried and tested, very tough technology. And remember as well, in the American Civil War, or indeed the Crimean War, 10 years, well, not even that, 5 years before in Europe, huge numbers of armies had to be equipped very quickly. Now, we're going to show you. We're going to show you something very quickly.
This is happy but sad for people who've been following the channel for a long time.
So,
this is Tango.
So I didn't know how to break this to you guys, but unfortunately, Oscar Cattinson, Cat Easton, went by very names, unfortunately is no longer with us. Some time ago, he left his mortal frame, and we were very upset about it. He's obviously been known to literally hundreds of thousands of you around the world, but unfortunately, all good things must come to an end, and he isn't around anymore.
I can't cry on the live stream, so let's just talk about
And
kittens.
anyway, he was an amazing cat and a big part of our lives, and basically we had Oscar for as long as we've been together, pretty much. Yeah. So
15 years.
But anyway, so unfortunately he's no longer around. That's why you haven't seen him in videos for a while. But we have
two new fans. This is one of them.
We have two new furry babies, and this one is called Tango. And
can you see her on the? Is she close enough? She's
a little mini tiger, and she's an 8th Bengal as well.
Thank you for all the nice comments about Oscar.
And but we've also got another one who is a black and white cat, but doesn't exactly look like Oscar because it's more white.
He's just run away to play with his.
Yeah, we might, if he turns up, you'll see him as well. And they're a boy and a girl. Tango's a girl, and the black and white one's a boy. So, and they are freaking amazing, and they've brought joy into our lives. In fact, they're the best thing that's happened in 2025, pretty much for us. So anyway, we're happy about those.
Right. Okay. We're gonna have to move fresh.
So first of all, thank you to sorry, who was the question from for the first? So that was Garen Brooks. Oh, I recognise you now. So thank you for that question. It's a brilliant question. Obviously, that's a short answer, but fundamentally, economy, reliability, and I think in the middle of the 19th century, these were incredibly, the most dominating factors behind choosing what small arms to equip. And it was the same all over the world, obviously the British, the French and everybody else. It wasn't really until we get to the Franco-Prussian War, I would say, or also the Indian Wars after the American Civil War, that we really start to see repeating rifles being used en masse. I think. Anyway.
Very strong answer. We have another super chat, however. We have a super chat from Free State Fellow. Thank you very much. You and Todd are the best Patreon content I watch. Any chance of a pullover from LK Chen or Windless in collaboration with you? I feel like the hilt shape would do well as opposed to a traditional pullover.
So Free State Fellow.
What's the
that's
difference
a really
between
good...
a pullover and a tulwar?
So in essence, a tulwar, they're very similar swords, and pulwar and tulwar
Well, I know what a tulwar is.
They're the same word, but pulwar is the Pashtun, in other words, Afghan, by modern definitions, Afghan word for tulwar. So it just means sword. And the pulwar has a hemispherical hollow pommel. It's actually made by half a hollow sphere and then a flat plate on the bottom, whereas a tulwar has a completely flat, usually, sometimes slightly curved, pommel. So slightly different pommel shapes, and I completely agree, the pulwar for most people is a more comfortable grip than a tulwar, and so therefore it might do better commercially. Would I do one with Windless? So here's the problem. So Windless are a mass producer, and they produce in very large numbers, bigger than any other sword making company I know, except for maybe someone like Hamway, although they don't really exist anymore. And I'm not sure that the market is big enough for a pulwar, but it might be, and so it's worth thinking about. So it's a good suggestion, and Tango, incidentally, of the two, is the most soppy and affectionate, so she keeps coming for more cuddles. She's absolutely lovely. So yeah, it's one to think about. I just don't know if the market's big enough to sustain mass production. And also, I would say you can get some pretty nice pulwars for not too much money on the antiques market. Right, okay, so because I mentioned some things I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to talk about the first one of those.
Go for it.
I just noticed literally this evening, Ilya, who is the famous smith, he's featured on various TV programmes, and he's on That Works channel. So shout out to That Works. And he made a thing talking about small swords, and he just made an interesting comment, which I thought was worth mentioning on the live stream, about finger rings on small swords, and he referenced me. Now, I'm not going to comment necessarily on what he was talking about.
Are you leaving?
No, I'm just grabbing a small sword, which happens to be behind Lucy. So, a couple of things about finger rings on small swords. So, small swords are called small swords, not because they're particularly small, but because they're a small version of a rapier. So, and they were sometimes known as rapiers in the 18th century. So, they are essentially, perhaps more correctly known as a small rapier rather than a small sword. Now, initially, because rapiers have finger rings to put your finger fully through, they do have fairly large rings on them, and some early small swords actually have pretty large rings. However, quite soon on, it was dictated that the best way to hold a small sword was not by putting your finger through the ring. This is what a complete noob would do, and it's not the most dexterous way to handle a small sword. Instead, and I'll move back so I can do it, the finger should rest against the side of the ring. So what you're actually doing is you're canting the hand and almost pointing with the index finger in the same direction as the blade. So it becomes a place to rest the tip of the finger. Now, not all small sword treatises tell you to hold the hilt like that. Some of them have other types of grip, but that is probably the most predominant type. And so what happens is these finger rings get smaller and smaller and smaller, kind of vestigial finger rings, to the point where they are literally a resting spot for the tip of your index finger. So finger rings, confusingly, on a small sword, sometimes known as patdain, for example, are not really finger rings in the true sense of what they originally started as. They become a resting point for the tip of the finger. And in fact, if we look at the fencing foil, which was the practice version of the small sword later on, then essentially that doesn't have finger rings at all. And some small swords don't have finger rings at all. So they kind of, on some, they disappear, but on some they stay around as a resting point for the tip of the finger.
Just if
so
you noticed, I wasn't laughing at what he was saying, the cat was in the bin. It was very funny.
So that's the first point to make, is that small swords are mini rapiers, but because they are mini and very light and used in a slightly different way, they are held in a different way, and the finger rings are no longer finger rings.
There's a couple of nice little questions here. Mark Scout 3447 says, "Hello Matt, I was wondering if there's a collaboration you've wanted to do but haven't gotten to yet."
Yes, loads of them.
Me talking about crochet on a sword YouTube channel.
So Lucy has a crochet channel, in case you didn't know, but we've never collaborated.
Weirdly, there's not
At
a lot
least
of
not on
crossover.
screen. Although I have suggested ideas for videos and stuff, haven't I? So we have collaborated kind of behind, and similarly Lucy does for my channel. So to answer the question properly, yes, absolutely loads. So for example, Jonathan Ferguson at the Royal Armouries, we've talked about at some point it'd be really nice if we could find some way to do a collaboration. There's David at Sellsword Arts. We've talked for months about doing a collaboration and just not got round to doing it. It's quite difficult to coordinate, especially with time differences, time zones. Also, Robin Swords, various. I mean, there's loads. I can probably think of about a dozen people that we have at some point talked about doing a collaboration with, but we've just not made it happen yet. So yes, there are loads on the cards, and I'm talking to loads of the other channels that you probably watch. You will have seen I did one with Scal the other day. Again, we've been trying to arrange a good time to do that for a couple of months. Mostly my fault, actually, because I've been very busy with other stuff, but he's also very busy. Obviously, I do stuff with Todd all the time. There's certain other people I would like to. Maybe I'd like to do something with Jorg Sprav one day.
I could crochet a scabbard. Great comment.
So yeah, I Drakinifel, of course, Alex Bocklington. He's a good friend of mine, and it's funny because I see him most weeks, but we haven't done much collaboration together, but we often talk about it. So there's probably more I'll do with Alex in the future. Drakinifel channel, and there's lots of others. So if I haven't mentioned you and you're watching this, you're one of the you're in there. There's various people. It's just difficult to organise. Great question there.
Sorry, it's just some funny comments about crochet. Someone asked a cool question earlier on, and I can't quite read my own writing, so forgive me if your name is not Keggy Gresher. But how do you start building up your first medieval style armour, and what should they start with?
Whoa. So start from the bottom up.
Good noise.
I don't mean the bottom of your body. I mean
just your butt.
Yeah, start from your ass and work out from there. No, start from the undergarments. Okay, so a lot of people, and I only mean a lot, and I put myself in this category as well, think, oh well, the plate armor is really expensive, so I'm going to save up money for that, and I'm going to throw money at that first. And that is the wrong thing to do, because you can't properly fit plate armor until you know what you've got underneath it. So you need a really good arming doublet. Funnily enough, shoes and hose, in my opinion, are sort of interchangeable. Medieval shoes, so long as they fit you and are of approximately similar shape, will go under pretty much any armor. Hose will go under any armor. In fact, I've even worn jeans under armor. What you wear on your legs doesn't matter that much. But the arming doublet is hugely important. So a well-fitted arming doublet that gives you a full range of motion and you can breathe in. So it's tight where it needs to be, but has space where it needs it, and mobility where it needs it, and is well made. And then over that, you have to remember the mail. And this is the other mistake that lots of people, including me, have made, because they get an arming doublet and they go, right, I'm going to get the plate armor fitted to that. But then they forget the fact that you would have a male skirt, you'd have male voiders, you'd have a male collar. So you want to build it up from the underneath outwards. And hopefully during that time, you can be saving more money for the plate as well. And because theoretically, a good plate harness is something that could last your entire life, as long as you stay roughly the right shape, basically buy the best armor that you can afford. Because otherwise, a bit like cars, like if you're buying a second-hand car, if you get a cheaper one, it's not going to last as long. You're going to want to buy a better one sooner. If you can put more money into it, then it will last longer, and it will be you'll like it for longer, basically. So there we go. I hope that sort of helps. But also during that time that you're building up the understuff, have a look at armourers and work out which armourers you like their work, and talk to other people, because a lot of us, as we use armour and experience different armourers' work, we find that some armourers make stuff that looks amazing, and some armourers make stuff that maybe doesn't look quite as good but works really well. Or some armourers are better at doing certain types of armour. That armourer might be really good at German Gothic harness, but that armourer might be really good at Italian or English or whatever. So do your research, take your time, and during that time, work from the inside outwards, particularly with arming doublet and the male voiders, getting them to work well and that kind of stuff.
Fabulous. So jumping back to asking about collaborations, someone said Bloomingek, which is the cool guy with the archery who does things.
Another David.
You should 100% do that. But also you have to do your collaboration with Oz, with English Martial Arts, where you talk about BJJ.
Yeah, right. Well,
So we've got this idea where Matt could go and film doing his first experience of BJJ with Oz, who is my coach for BJJ. And I think this is a really, really good idea. And I think it would make a cool video, like Sword Person does BJJ. You should all definitely say this is a good idea in the comments, and then maybe he'll actually do it.
Yeah. HEMA guy with no BJJ experience does BJJ. What happens? It'd be interesting. Cool. Yeah, definitely. We'll come back to BJJ in a bit.
Can we just talk about it?
So I'll tell you what.
You've got another super chat. Pause for the super chat.
No, but they're related. I'm going to point my biro at you.
On camera.
So Wild Hunter says, any chance of a post on European hunting weapons? Yes. So first of all, thank you for the super chat. That's a really good question. And yes, I will do it at some point. But that connects nicely to one of my points here. So Mesa survival. What do I mean? Survival with a Mesa, Rambo style. Well, it could be, and kind of. It's sort of related. So it has occurred to me quite a few times over the last year.
Thank you for your good idea comment.
That people think of Messers as a medieval weapon. So Messers being the German falchion type thing with a knife construction grip. That they were a medieval weapon and they disappeared with the Renaissance. But actually they didn't. They survived, okay? And they survived as hunting swords. So if we look at 18th and 19th century, even early 20th century hunting swords, they're basically Messers in many, many cases. And now what were they used for? They were primarily used for two main things. One, for dispatching or defending against a wounded animal that had been shot. So if you shot it with a crossbow or a pellet bow or obviously a rifle or a musket, and the thing was still alive, then you could dispatch it with your hand weapon rather than having to reload your slow reloading weapon. Or if you shot something and it charged at you, like a stag or a boar or potentially a bear, then you've got a hand weapon to protect yourself with. And many of those take the form, well, essentially descend from Messers. So I've got a couple of weapons here. Oh, and the other purpose I was going to mention is what I would describe as bushcraft. So on one hand, therefore, killing or defending yourself from a prey animal, the thing that you've been hunting, or therefore dismembering it, so removing the limbs from a deer, for example, or therefore bushcraft in terms of like chopping up branches or preparing some firewood and this kind of stuff. So they're kind of like giant Bowie knives. They're all-purpose short swords. And these were Messers, essentially. I've got a couple of examples here. So here is an example. This is actually from my antique business stock. Here is something that, by all intents and purposes, is a Messer. But it's a 19th century, probably French hunting sword. And if you look, it's got a knife style, slightly kind of Eastern European, perhaps Polish style hilt. These are actually not rivets, although they're clearly descended from the rivets which go through a full tang. This is actually a sword style tang and peened at the end. Small guard, because obviously you're not fighting people with it, generally speaking, although you could use this for self-defense. And essentially a Messer blade. This is exactly like the Messer blades that you see in medieval sources used by people like Talhofer. So that's one type. That actually is a hunting sword. The other type I've got here, this is actually Austrian, so it's from the right part of the world for Messer. This is actually the Pioneer's sword. Look at that whopping great blade on that, Lucy. And because it's Austrian, it's got a fuller on one side and it's flat on the other side. Isn't that cool? It's a very Austrian thing.
Are you talking about Messers?
Yeah, but that is essentially...
But that's not next on your list.
No. Does that upset you?
I feel that very uncomfortable about that.
I've gone 1 to 3.
He's madly jumped from 1 to 3.
Well, because it was a super chat question.
Oh, yeah, no,
so, so essentially, that is a Messer, but this is a Pioneer's. In other words, these are the like sappers and pioneers who had to prepare gun emplacements and all that kind of stuff. So there we go. Messers did survive to become Pioneer's swords, hunting swords, and I would argue possibly even they became the Bowie knife as well. So I believe that all of those things, those kind of outdoorsman, forester swords and knives, descend from the Messer. And the Bauernwehr, the peasant knife as well.
So we have another super chat. Thank you very much to Parabellum Silvano. Hi Matt, Happy New Year. Any news on your new armour that was being made? I love your videos.
Well, thank you very much, Parabellum. Yes, there is news. It's continuing to be made. Here's the other cat. Brief interlude to show you.
He's come to jump on the one that's asleep on my lap.
This one is Arlo. And as you can see, he's mostly white with a lot of black bits. His black bits are actually getting larger as he goes along. I don't think he likes being held like that. He doesn't. He's very, very cute. And they fight a lot. They're very entertaining to watch.
Fight as in, like, nicely fight.
Yeah, play fight.
Hi, I'm Arlo.
So getting back to the question. So yes, my armour's continuing to be made by Tabor Armory in Belgrade in Serbia. I'll probably be going back over to Belgrade actually for the second fitting at some point, I would imagine, early in 2026. The Great Bassinet and the Sallet, because it's got two helmets, are mostly made, ready for hardening. The cuirass, well, the arms and the legs are mostly made. The upper cuirass is mostly made and pretty much finished. And I think the skirt and the gauntlets are probably the last things being done. But it's pretty much there. So it's kind of getting to the stage where I'm ready to go and have the next fitting. And to be honest, I loved going to Belgrade. I found it fascinating. I liked the people. And I'm very happy to go back to Belgrade again. So that will be my excuse to go back there again at some point. So
someone said down they thought Arlo's name would be Cash, which is funny.
Yeah, I know, right?
Good joke.
But yeah, and I've never actually watched Tango and Cash. I told someone that recently, and he was horrified that I'd never seen that.
Isn't it really old?
Classic. Well, it's 80s. It's not as old as me.
I mean, I'm 80s.
It's as old as you. So, I saw a highlighted. If you go down.
This one?
No. Highlighted with.
That's just because they're at you. That's just a clever move.
Right, so that's a good question. Is there any... So this is from Aaron79329. Are there any plans or updates in regards to the Easton Saber 3 from Ketan? And what's the current situation with Ketan? Honestly, the best thing is to ask Ketan what the current situation is. I had a meeting with Alex from Ketan a couple of weeks ago. And it's all, honestly, without going into too much depth, it's a really crap situation they're in. I don't know at the moment. Hopefully the new year will bring better news for them because a lot of their funds and machinery and stuff is currently kind of on hold because of losing because of a member of their team essentially dying. So it's a pretty crap situation that they're in the way that because a lot of things belonged to that person and so they can't access them. So yeah, it's a big old mess. So unfortunately, I don't know. But I continue to work with Ketan. I continue to recommend them to everyone. They can still do custom work incidentally. So if you want to order custom things from them, from directly from their HQ in Prague, then you can do. And so, you know, my thoughts go out to them, the whole team. They've lost a friend and a team member. So hopefully they can manage to get back up and running in 2026. And I'll do whatever I can to help that happen. So that's as much as I can say on that one. Yeah, next question. Let's have a look through here. I
wrote someone's question down really early on, but my writing is completely illegible. So there were more questions right at the beginning.
Right, let's go up. So
we now each have a kitten asleep on our laps.
Oh yeah.
It's
I've got the black and white one.
It's very cute.
Happy New Year from Denmark. Yay! I've been to Denmark 3 times in my life. I've been to Legoland, Denmark, when I was a kid. And I've been to Aarhus and Aalborg, I think. It was in my 20s. I was probably drunk when I was there, so I think that's where I was.
That's the question about Smatchets, if you want to jump back to point number 2. Are Smatchets the last gasp of leaf blades?
Yeah, so I can't reach the Smatchet right now because I've now got a cat on my lap. And as everybody knows in the world of cats, when you've got a cat in your lap,
try and hold him up
you can't
without
move anywhere.
overly waking
Right,
him.
there we go. Let's grab the Smatchet. Oh.
Sorry, but
Right. So, sort of, in a sense. So a lot's been written about the Smatchet. And actually, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do it the advised way, which is like that. And oh, I can't remember now. Anyway, right. So, is the Smatchet the last hurrah of the leaf blade? Well, kind of. If you saw my video that I did on Scalagrim's channel the other day, I did argue that this is a modern leaf blade, in a sense, although it's single-edged predominantly. So I know they have made a double-edged version of the Smatchet, but the original Smatchet has got a long edge here, and then it's got a little false edge up here that's very short. But it's fundamentally a single-edged blade. I would argue that this is simply a British military version of the Filipino barong. And it's as simple as that, in my view. It is a barong. And bear in mind that Fairbairn himself was in the Shanghai police for more than a decade, I think, maybe 20 years. So he was in China, and he had a lot of exposure to all sorts of Asian weapons. And I think a lot of people try and make an analogue between this and the Welsh Fusiliers sword of World War One. And I actually don't think there's a relationship, really, apart from the fact they achieve a similar goal. But the Welsh Fusilier sword is a much bigger sword and was supposedly based on a bronze leaf blade. So, I think that this is just a kind of a hardcore military version of a barong, essentially. So is it a leaf blade? Well, sort of in the same way that a Filipino barong is a leaf blade. I hope that sort of answers the question.
That's an excellent answer. You have another super chat. I'm afraid I'm coughing quite a lot, so you probably need to read it out.
Yeah,
I apologise for my asthma's not very nice to me the last couple of days. It's the cold. But I'll go and stand outside and cough in a minute. Do you want to read that out?
Yeah.
I see it.
So, Wild Hunter, thank you for the super chat, says, I'd love to see a series of posts on treatises and fecht books. Also a series of great weapon masters and their weapons and philosophy, e.g. George Silver. Yeah, that's a really good idea. I think in the last year, I have responded a bit to the algorithm. So I'm not one of those people who necessarily chases the algorithm as much as certain other channels. I tend, for the most part, to do videos on things that I think are interesting, and sometimes the viewers think they're interesting. However, I have noticed that there are certain topics which just don't seem popular with viewers, and I think that's one of the reasons that I've gone a little bit away from the deep dive treaty stuff, because they seem to be really popular with a small number of people. But you're right, I should do more of this, and I think it's down to me to think about how to frame it in a way that people will click on and be interested in seeing. So I think the way
to use a really catchy word.
Yeah, I think without being massively clickbait, I think the way to do it is to think about a particular topic or theme and then use treatises to illustrate it. But yeah, it's a really good suggestion. As for George Silver...
You love it.
So Lucy's introduction to the world of HEMA was essentially through the window of George Silver, which I
still have a very soft spot
which
for
I
George
personally...
Silver.
So I like George Silver's source, but I actually think it's one of the worst possible HEMA sources to enter HEMA through. Because there is so much in George Silver which is open to multiple interpretations. And I think, for example, I mean, I'm biased obviously because I love Saber and I teach, kind of 19th century stuff.
But don't you think that having solid principles is a good way to start HEMA?
But I think that because 19th century stuff is so clear and concise and well explained and codified, it's a really good entry point into HEMA because there's nothing really conjectural about it. It's straightforward, it makes sense, it plugs into things like modern fencing and a kind of modern martial arts training mindset. And I think George Silver, a lot of it is a little bit verging on the esoteric and theoretical. And I think if you don't have a solid foundation in fencing principles and how to use a sword, then I think you're kind of lost going into HEMA through George Silver. Now, I know that might make me unpopular with some people, but for example, I think, I've always said to George Silver people, and Lucy can attest to this, or Oz could, why don't you study Swetnam, okay? Because a lot of Joseph Swetnam, who's only, 18 years later than George Silver, and he's English, if you really want to study Elizabethan era, kind of English source, Joseph Swetnam has techniques that are
I
easier
don't know if Oz is still in the comments. Oz, if you're still in the comments and listening, you can respond and I'll read it out.
I'm not saying that necessarily Swetnam and Silver are the same systems. I actually don't think they are. But nevertheless, at least it's the right nation and it's the right period. So, similarly...
Get him on the phone.
Similarly, a lot of people, I think, in German longsword would argue you don't go in via the medium of Dobringer, as he's sometimes known, or as that source is sometimes known. You would be better off going in through Joachim Meyer, for example. He's 100 years more than that later, in fact 200 years later almost, but he explains things in a way which is far more accessible and understandable for a modern audience that isn't living at the time.
So Oz's response is, because Swetnam was a raving misogynist with a small bag of tricks and no system at all to speak of.
So, first of all, we don't know...
Fight team!
We don't know that George Silver wasn't also a raging misogynist. It's just that he
wasn't as open about it.
It's just that he didn't write books about it. So, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Joseph Swetnam wrote a book about sword fighting and a book about how terrible women were. And he was known as Swetnam the woman hater. And anyway, no, he's an interesting character. But anyway, there we go.
Interesting is the word. You have a couple of super chats. Firstly, Wild Hunter says, I believe with reference to talking about making the thumbnail and title clickable, use bloodthirsty quotes. That is
actually a solid suggestion. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And then we have, thank you very much for a super chat from a Noble Reflex 8332. I never know if I'm meant to read out the numbers on these, but to some people they might be significant, so I'm going to. What book would you recommend for dating spadroons?
First of all,
very much the
I recommend don't date spadroons.
It's really uncomfortable.
I highly recommend either dating humans or animals. So
date animals.
But you'll get
what? He doesn't recommend dating animals. This is I just woke the cat up. He's very sorry and would like to apologise to all animals. Don't date spadroons.
Lucy just screeched so loudly that the cat tried to evacuate her lap to get to me.
Right, so what book would you recommend for historically dating spadroons? I have one with no markings but a fairly elaborate hilt in the collection. It also has damage. Don't date robots.
I can't think of...
Sorry, it's a Futurama.
I can't think of a good book for dating spadroons off the top of my head.
Don't save that soundbite, Oz. Animals have trouble showing up at restaurants on time. That's very good.
They're more reliable than some humans, though. Anyway,
they don't have watches. They don't fit on their arms. Oh, don't leave me for him, Tango. I'm sorry.
Who's dating an animal now? Right. So, I can't really think of a good answer to that. I'm really sorry. I think if you've got an antique sword that you don't know the identity of, honestly, so the best group if you go on Facebook, and I know some of you hate Facebook, but there's a really good group called the International Antique Sword Collectors page, and that is the best page to post pictures of an antique sword on and go, what have I got here? And me or various other people who are on there will tell you, basically. And honestly, if you look at the posts on that page and keep up with, in the old days I would have said go on Sword Forum or My Armory or whatever, but these days a lot of those groups have migrated to Facebook or similar places.
So apparently the aspect ratio of the stream is incorrect. It's meant to be 16:9. Apparently it's 4:3. Is that something we can change?
I don't know.
Okay, I'm afraid we're not... Anyone who's savvy at streams and YouTube Creator Studio who can give us how to do that.
I think that would be a setting on OBS rather than... no, I don't think that helps.
We might have just made something really weird happen. Can you even still see what's on the screen at this point?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Oh, I see what you... Yeah, because it's only filling part of the... Sorry, I don't know how to change that right now without disconnecting the... And we just... I did just make us zoom slightly. Whoa. Yay! I'm more central now. There we go. Sorry, I don't know how to fix that without disconnecting the live stream. Yeah, essentially go online, ask some people, do some Googling, Google image search. I'm sorry that's a crap answer, but there are lots of good antique sword books, but they tend to be geographic. So you can get good books on British military swords or French military swords or Prussian military swords. But the problem is if you don't know where the spadroon that you've got is from, that might not really, one of those books might not help you by itself. So, sorry.
So, Jack Smith, yes, says, do you know why blades were not replaced by rivets or bolts near the hilt? If blades were so prone to damage, this way allows a sword to transform a sword into a saber by angles. Best cut and pierce. I'm afraid I don't quite understand the question.
No, so...
Do you?
Do you know why blades were not replaced by rivets or bolts near the hilt?
So why were they peened rather than... like screwed in? Is that the question?
Yeah, okay. So fundamentally, yeah, so I'm not fully sure I understand, but peening is actually relatively easy to remove. So bear in mind that historically most tangs were made of iron, so the blade was steel and the tang was iron. So the tang is relatively soft. So you just file the peen off the end, and then you can pop the hilt off fairly easily. You can bang it off. I don't know if that answers the question, but so ironically, a Langmesser, let's use a Smatchet as an example. So a Langmesser which has rivets through the tang here and through the pommel if it has a pommel, that's actually, I would argue, more trouble to remove than a traditional fully, peened through the end tang, because you've got multiple rivets to remove here, whereas you only have one. I don't know if that answers the question. And if we go to Asia, obviously with Japanese and some Chinese swords, you've just got one peg or pin through, which is easy to remove. And then with Indian, for example, and some Middle Eastern swords, they're essentially glued onto the tang. So you heat them up and the glue reliquefies and you just pop the hilt off, and you can put some new glue in, which is made of mostly a mixture between pine resin and mixture of charcoal and bits and pieces of other things, and you heat it up, and when it liquefies you push the tang in, and when it solidifies it has almost the strength of modern epoxy, two-part epoxy, so it's pretty damn strong, but it has the advantage that you can remove it just by heating it up. I don't know if that answers the question, but maybe there's some useful information.
Don Jones of Wales has a really important question. It is, what is Matt's favourite double entendre?
I don't know. I'll have to get back to you on that one.
I thought you might have an off-the-cuff response one. I'll ask you again later once you've thought of one.
I don't know. I know that obviously I talk a lot about shafts, the butt, and penetration quite a lot. I should really get some more repertoire. I love you, Valerie. I should really get some more repertoire to my double entendre. But yeah. And
what's your favourite Metallica song? Important question. My Left 9397.
Oh man, my favourite Metallica. For Whom the Bell Tolls. Oh. Or Ride the Lightning.
No.
Or Master of Puppets. I love Unforgiven. Enter Sandman. So I basically, my three favourite Metallica albums are Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and the Black Album, probably. Actually, Justice for All as well, actually, is amazing. Oh gosh, there we go.
Oh, Nothing Else Matters.
Oh, Nothing Else Matters.
100%, that is the best Metallica
I
song.
prefer, yeah.
Especially with the scary video.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Fade to Black as well. There's loads.
Someone else asked a what kind of music do you like question at the beginning of the scream.
Right, so what kind of music do I like? So you can probably tell from some of my t-shirts, although you'll only be able to tell one section of my musical loves from my t-shirts. So I tend to wear t-shirts that relate to music that I loved particularly when I was a teenager. So I started out as a metalhead, or metaler, as it was called in Britain when I was a teenager.
Metler.
Metaler. Well,
Metaler.
no, actually, I kind of got. I think Guns N' Roses were probably the first band I ever got massively into.
Really?
And then
I
I
did not
moved
know
rapidly on to, if we call them rock, I guess, maybe hard rock. I don't know. I moved on rapidly into metal, and at that point, I got through Metallica. I then got massively into Pantera, Sepultura. Oh god, loads of Megadeth I liked for a while. Morbid Angel for a short time. All sorts of sort of 90s metal, basically late 80s and first half of the 90s metal. And then I moved into grunge, and so I was heavily into Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Audioslave, Faith No More, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. So mostly rock, and then grunge. And then kind of into indie. I got into the whole Britpop thing, so I was quite, I was big into people like, Blur and Suede and stuff like that. But also some of the kind of British rock of the time, like Skunk Anansie.
I love Skunk Anansie.
Yeah, and so loads of diverse stuff. However, at the same time, I also got into quite a lot of old music as well. So I was into quite a lot of 60s stuff. I'm a massive Doors fan. Really love the Doors.
Or says Dio.
Yeah, I had Holy Diver, was it? Yeah,
Iron Maiden, love Iron Maiden.
So I was never really a big Maiden fan, actually.
Well, you were wrong.
But anyway, but I was also, so this is the thing that people perhaps wouldn't know about. I was also massively into late 60s and 70s kind of Motown, funk and soul stuff. So the Commodores, Lionel Richie, Stevie Wonder. I got quite into 70s disco stuff for a while. But, kind of stuff like
Nails.
The Eagles. Yeah, I was never massively into Nine Inch Nails at the time, but I do like them quite a lot now. Rammstein, bloody love Rammstein.
Someone's mentioned that you often wear Faith No More t-shirts.
I love Faith No More are definitely in my top favourite bands.
And I asked if you liked Mr. Bungle. That sounds like a kids' TV show.
So I have to be honest, I wanted to like Mr. Bungle. And I have like in Tomahawk as well, which is another one of Mike Patton's side projects. So I really wanted to love Mike Patton's side project stuff or kind of other stuff, because I know Mr. Bungle kind of predates his Faith No More stuff, but I kind of don't. Okay, honestly, I love Faith No More, and I've wanted to love his other stuff, but it's okay. I don't dislike it, but it never really did it for me. So for me, Faith No More definitely probably in my top 5 favourite bands of all time. But yeah, I like a lot of 60s stuff, 70s stuff, but I also like a lot of 80s new wave stuff, early new wave. I love The Cure. But I also love some proper cheesy stuff. I freaking love Wham.
He does.
I love Wham.
That's not a Christmas joke. He really loves Wham.
I genuinely love Wham. Love George Michael. I love Duran Duran, Spandau Ballet. But I also love classical stuff. I'm a massive fan of Vaughan Williams, Elgar, Dvorak, loads. A bit of Vivaldi even. But yeah, so I love I love classical, I love some funk and soul, classic Motown, all types of rock and indie and grunge, and yeah, I've got huge diverse taste in music. I would say, generally speaking, there are very few bands that post-date 2010 that I really care about at all. Pretty much most of the music I love is pre-2010.
That's really interesting because there's only one band that there's two, but that I like that are more recent, and one I think it's pronounced Voila, like Voila.
Yeah.
I really, really like them.
Yeah.
A friend of mine introduced them to me recently, and the other one is a woman called Roxy, and the band's called Rory, and it's really good.
Oh yeah. And also some dance music as well. I love Faithless. I love Prodigy. Chemical Brothers. Yeah, loads. So there's loads. I love music actually, and back in the day I used to love dancing, dancing the night away in the nightclub.
Love a good dance.
So anything that makes you dance, I pretty much like.
So we have a super chat. Thank you very much to a string of letters. RK-PZ6TX. You sure that's not your password? Been watching your channel since I was 16 or so. I'm now 30. Would love to see you do a video on boar spears, particularly on their use against humans in war rather than the hunting side of things.
RKPZ6TX, is that a submachine gun?
Are you sure
Or a
it's not
tank?
your password?
I feel like I've seen that. Is that a submachine gun? Post underneath. Let us know.
That's the kind of thing I'd use as a password.
A PZ. Is that a tank? Is that Panzer?
What is your username?
Is that a tank?
It's intriguing. But yeah, that's really cool that you've been watching it for so long. I think the channel's Lily was a baby, so it's about 12, 13 years old.
Yeah, so the channel's kind of, what's it word? The birth of it. What's the word for that?
Inception.
Genesis?
The inception.
Yeah,
I want inception.
the Genesis
inception of
was,
the channel.
was,
that was the Arundel video.
Yeah, it was coming back from fight camp with our good friend Scott Brown.
I wasn't objecting
Hi,
to your
Scott,
username,
if you're out
I'm sorry.
there. And we were coming back from fight camp, and I was going, you know what? I think there's kind of scope to do a kind of HEMA weapons-centric channel on YouTube, because I've noticed some people I watch, on YouTube making videos talking about weapons, and they don't know what the heck they're talking about.
So Tango's slipping down the gap between us, so I'm just going to have to...
We've got cats on us. We've got like a carpet of cats on us at the moment. Burned by the Cure is fucking epic. I agree. I love the Cure, and they lost one of their members the other day, so rest in peace. I've forgotten the guy's name, but yeah. That's sad. Unfortunately, we're of the age now. I'm of the age now where a lot of the music icons of my younger years are unfortunately starting to disappear.
Apparently,
from the world,
a PZ6TX is a drill bit.
Oh wow! It's a drill bit. Wow.
This is so. There is a question here that you will answer in 0 seconds flat. If Matt had to give up either music or experimenting and discussing historical weapons for the rest of his life, which one would he give up? You give up music.
Oh my god. That's like, do I give up food or drink?
No, he'd give up music. He might think that that's a difficult question. It's not.
Jeez. That's a horrible question. I don't even want to
He'd give up music.
I don't want to even have to think about that kind of... horrible. I'm going to have a nightmare about that now. Yeah, that would be a tough one.
It would, but we know where it would go.
Yeah.
Would you consider doing an April Fool's Day video? I've always imagined a video where, we've talked about this, where one or two of you is trying to find a spoon to eat some ice cream, but all you can find are cookies everywhere. We talked about doing an April Fool's video on a few different things, but like with the crochet crossover, we talked about talking about the benefits of crocheted armour, for example, like they used to do for film and stuff. So you've talked about it.
Yeah, we've talked about April Fool's videos and also posts on the Facebook page and various things like that. I think I might have done a couple of April Fool's posts on the Facebook page.
You've done posts, yeah.
I think the problem is, so over the years when I've done kind of prank or joke things in videos, a significant number of people have taken it seriously, and that's upset some people.
So many people.
And I think this has kind of put me off, because I don't want to upset anyone if I can avoid it, and that's it really. And I know some other channels out there make slightly more outspoken and kind of edgy content than I do, and trust me, I have some pretty strong views on some things, but I really hate upsetting people, and I guess it's quite a British thing of wanting to be polite and not upset anybody, not upset the apple cart, as we'd say. And so, yeah, I don't know.
You're too nice.
Oz
has asked a very important... Some
people would strongly disagree with that.
Oz has
I
asked
can
a
be a
very
real
important
a-hole
question.
in some situations, but...
English Martial Arts says, Lucy, what is your favourite submission, and do you reckon you could get Matt with it? My favourite submission is any armbar. And it would depend on the context of the fight whether I could get him with it. He's going to regret that.
Right, do you know what? That is a good segue to talk about BJJ, because that's on my list here. So we've talked about small swords and smatchets and messers, but we haven't talked about BJJ or archery yet. So let's talk about BJJ. So why are we going to talk about BJJ? So first of all, I'll talk about me, and then we'll talk about Lucy. So I have literally never done a lesson of either jiu-jitsu or BJJ or any kind of MMA, even though for years I've run fight camp, and at fight camp we've had all all sorts of wrestling classes, including catch and obviously older styles of, like ring and medieval and Renaissance stuff. But in addition to that, in recent years, we have also had jiu-jitsu, BJJ and MMA classes. And a number of my friends, including my wife, do one of or combinations of those things. So now let's talk about Lucy. Lucy, what do you do? What is it you do and where do you do it? And let's give a shout out to them.
So I've been doing BJJ for 9 or 10 months now, and years ago, like a decade
So
ago,
what belt
I used
are
to
you?
do catch wrestling. I'm a white belt.
But are you a white belt with any stripes?
I'm a 2-striped white belt. So I'm the bottom of the pack, but it's incredibly fun. It's got a lovely community, and I'm just completely obsessed with BJJ, which is why Matt has written it on his list of things to talk about. I do it with English Martial Arts Academy and train with some amazing people at Malin, which is near Liphook for anyone in the Hampshire area of England. But yeah, it's really awesome and really fun and incredibly technical, and yeah, it's really good. Give it a go if you want to.
So we'll come back to BJJ in a second. Jason Konopinski just asked me, just going back to music for a second, Matt, do you know Wardruna or Heilung? So I very much know Wardruna, and I love Wardruna.
Is that a name?
Yeah, they're sort of Viking-esque inspired, kind of paganish music, and made famous by the show Vikings. Yes, I listen to Wardruna often when I'm trying to concentrate, weirdly. I find it brilliant background music when I'm writing something, doing whatever. But I don't know Heilung, so I'll look them up. So thank you for the recommendation. Right, back to BJJ. So you did do wrestling stuff before that,
I
didn't
did
you?
catch wrestling,
Yeah.
which was amazing fun. It's got an incredibly different rule set to jiu-jitsu. You're not allowed to get on your back in catch, and in jiu-jitsu you're on your back quite a lot of the time, depending on how you fight. I'm on my back quite a lot of the time. But yeah, it's equally very fun.
I'm not sure you should have said that.
Please don't snippet that as a
TMI,
statement.
TMI.
I'm on my back quite a lot of the time. Don't worry, I've got my legs around them, it's fine. But hey, you've got a super chat. Thanks, DJ203B, for the super chat. That's very kind. Can you talk about the effectiveness of archers outside of massed archers? Would an individual or a small number of archers be useful in a retinue? Do you want to answer that now or wait until we're on to archery?
I will answer that now, and then I'll come back to general archery a bit later. So I should feature more archery on the channel. Again, funnily enough, I was talking about this to our kids earlier in the car because one of them asked me a question, like, why don't you do more of X, Y, or Z on the channel? I won't tell you what because it would spoil it too much. And I said, well, look, because I would hate to be one of those people on the internet that, like some of the people that annoy me, talk a lot about things I don't really know much about. So I'm not saying I'm like the god of knowledge on swords, but it should be fairly evident after 15 years that I know a fair amount about swords and antique swords and various other types of weapons. Now, funnily enough, I'll come back to archery later in the video, but I have done archery since I was 11 years old. I started archery formally when I was 11 years old. So I could talk about archery, but the reason I don't talk more about archery on the channel is because I'm a crap archer at the moment, because I'm completely out of practice. So I did archery and even competed to a reasonable junior level between age 11 and 18, and then I continued doing archery until I was in my early 20s, and then I just, I got into HEMA and other things, and I just didn't really have time for it. So I don't consider myself a credible authority on the practice of archery currently. However, I have researched a lot of the historical sources behind and archaeology behind archery and archery equipment. So I try and focus on that. So I might talk about arrowheads, I might talk about the use of archers in certain medieval battles during the 100 Years' War or Wars of the Roses or whatever. And I'm content talking about that, and I try and limit myself to that. But if I'm going to talk about archery and actually showing the shooting of bows, I want to have someone who is a really good archer on the channel to do it. Unless I can get back to it standard where I consider myself a passable archer in order to do it. So
You had one of the people that Todd had recently on his Arrow versus Armour video.
So could you scroll up to the question again? So back to the super chat. So can you talk about the effectiveness of archers outside of massed archers? Would an individual or small number of archers be useful in a retinue? Yes, 100%. So I think anybody that's done any form of skirmishing, for example, in reenactment or LARP, or possibly in HEMA, because we are starting to do more kind of massed stuff in HEMA, melee games and stuff like this. One archer can absolutely be a game changer, particularly if the people have got no armor or a mixed level of armor. Okay, we have to concede that full plate harness is 95% of the time protection against arrows. You can just run at someone who's shooting arrows at you and the archer's going to be in trouble. Okay, but the 21-foot rule essentially. But in normal skirmishing, let's say in the ancient world or the Viking era or most of the first part of the later medieval period, one archer shooting arrows around is going to absolutely change the nature of the fight. If you've got more than one archer, even more so, because it essentially increases the rate of fire. I know there's no fire involved, it's a bow. So yeah, as we see in the 100 Years' War, you know, the English would regularly field a force that was predominantly made of archers. And the French, often in the skirmishes, for example, in the Crécy campaign up until the Battle of Crécy, would often field forces that were mostly made of crossbowmen. And yes, there were men-at-arms and knights who were involved in going and taking positions and capturing the gateway to a town, or, you know, scaling a ladder to get up onto the wall and this kind of stuff. But archers were absolutely critical in providing covering fire or taking out the enemy crossbowmen who were defending the walls or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, we fixate on this channel mostly on hand weapons, but historically we could say that missile weapons, whether it's thrown spears, slings, javelins, obviously, or bows and crossbows, and later obviously firearms, are actually kind of more important, okay? So yes, you need hand weapons to take and hold ground or go into buildings and things like this, or trenches, but missile weapons throughout most of history, and even in tribal societies, whether it's throwing spears, shooting bows or whatever, or boomerangs, missile weapons have kind of, I would say, almost dominated warfare. And I think there's a human desire to not get close to the opponents. And we see this even in the gunpowder age. Often a bayonet charge was responded to by running away. And a lot of people point out, they go, oh, well, you know, bayonets weren't effective in the US Civil War because they only produced a tiny number of the casualties. And it's like, yeah, but every single time we look at an account of a bayonet charge, a lot of the time, sorry, not every single time, a lot of the time, the response was for the other side to run away. Ergo, the bayonet charge was really effective. Yes, it didn't kill people, but it forced them to run away. So hand weapons are super important, obviously, for dueling and in trench fighting and buildings, as mentioned, and for making the opponents run away. But missile weapons, historically, have probably produced the greatest number of casualties for most of history, I would say. So yes, the answer is yes. Archers, hugely important, and more people should shoot bows.
We've had a few cool questions.
Jack R222 says, what synthetic bow knives would you recommend for sparring? We use the cold steel ones. They're brilliant. The only thing I would say is the cold steel synthetic Bowie knives can hit really freaking hard if you know what you're doing. They can thrust hard, they can chop hard. So we wear the same gear for sparring with those as we wear for sparring with steel sabers. We just leave our full steel sparring gear on, and then they're perfect. They're brilliant. What I would say is we're looking at some simulators to use for Bowie knife fighting where we don't have to wear all that kit, because all that kit is expensive and hot, and you're much more fluid with not all of that gear on. So we're currently looking at some essentially padded simulators that we can use. And we have used padded simulators in the past, but we're looking at trying to create something so that people can just put a fencing mask and some gloves on and they can go at Bowie knife fighting, because it's really good fun and you can learn some really good fencing principles with a knife-side object. And it's really nice if you can do that without having to put lots of gear on. Good question.
So, Azrael915 says, "Hi Matt, I visited London and Birmingham last June and was wondering if they did HEMA trial classes for beginners in that area, and otherwise which places have good exhibits of weapons and armour. There are many places where you can do beginner-friendly classes for HEMA. I don't know about like officially trial classes in London and Birmingham, but yeah, there's lots of good groups in those areas.
Yeah, so what I would say is most HEMA clubs welcome beginners pretty much any time.
And visitors from other clubs as well.
Some clubs like to restrict the number of people in class to a certain number, so they might have a waiting list, but most of us don't, so my clubs don't. If you happen to be visiting, you can come to either of my clubs. Just send us an email beforehand so we know you're coming. That's mostly just in case for some reason we're not training that week, or for some reason we're doing a specific course or something like that. But usually you can just come and drop in, and that's true of anyone in London. You can come to our London class. We have a class in Woking for anyone that's in driving distance or train distance of Woking in Surrey. As for Birmingham, there's about 3 clubs around Birmingham, and the Midlands in general. If you go wider, then there's more than that. It's probably about 6 or 8 clubs. So yeah, just Google Maps, search for where or go on the.
You don't want to say which ones are your favourites?
No.
Who do you like the best?
But all I can say is for my club, you're welcome. We have visitors from all over the world. In any given year, we'll have people from China, Australia, Canada, America, various bits of Europe, South Africa, wherever. So yeah, you're very welcome.
That's a cool question. Dom Jones of Wales says, favourite Welsh or English castle?
So my favourite English castle is one which is in relatively short driving distance from us, and it's Porchester Castle. And I like...
That's not what I thought you were going to say.
Oh, well, we'll come back to it. So Porchester Castle is my favourite for a number of reasons. One, it's by the sea. There are some other castles by the sea. Obviously, there's Dover Castle and various others, but it's by the sea and looks out across the sea and looks at Portsmouth, which was always the home of the Royal Navy. But Porchester Castle, rather than just being a medieval castle, is one of the longest standing stretches of Roman wall outside of Italy, or rather north of Italy. And it's one of what were called the Saxon shore forts. So for those of you who dispute that there were ever Anglo-Saxon or Anglo-Saxon and Jute invasions or Germanic invasions during the migration era of the British Isles, I would say, why were they building the Saxon shore forts then at huge expense right way around the southeast of England?
White in that tone of voice.
Yes, anyway, there we go. Very much there were invasions of the British Isles during that period, and I think all of the evidence and the DNA now supports that. But anyway, there is a series of forts that the late Romans, the Romano British, built around the sort of southern and up the eastern coast of Britain. The biggest surviving one of these is Porchester Castle. So the Romans built this massive great fort with a garrison, with bastions around it, with ballista, catapult mounted in them. And then later in the medieval period, they came along and plonked a medieval castle in one corner of it. So it's brilliant. It's a Roman castle. It's a medieval castle. It's brilliant to visit. It looks at the sea. It's got a really high keep, and if you go up to the top of the Norman keep, you can see for blooming miles. You can see Fort Nelson, you can see Portsmouth, you can see loads. And in addition to that, it's also one of the places where the army mustered for the Agincourt campaign under Henry V. And in the Napoleonic period, they kept French prisoners of war there as well. So it's got Roman, it's got early medieval, it's got migration era. It's got later, it's got Norman, it's got late medieval, it's got Napoleonic. It was even used in World War II for various things as well. So it's just brilliant castle. As for Wales. Wales.
I lived in Wales for 3 years, so I should be able to more rapidly answer this question.
So Pembroke Castle.
Yeah.
Pembroke Castle, for me emotionally, because I went there as a child, and I used to have a picture of it on my wall when I was a kid. So I've got emotional connections to Pembroke Castle, although I wouldn't argue it's the best castle in Wales.
What is the castle that has got quite a few bits that are still remaining, and there's like a steam train near to it?
That's in Dorset. You're thinking of...
That's one of the prettiest castles.
Oh, you're thinking of the one in Dorset, I think. That's not in Wales.
No, that's I think that's one of the prettiest castles.
Corfe Castle. Corfe Castle in
That's a
Dorset.
really
That's
nice
really
castle.
cool. And they blighted it. They split the keep in the English Civil War to prevent it being used as a fortification.
No, I thought you were going to say Arundel Castle.
I do love Arundel Castle, and it's relatively close to us.
Go there when there's not like a thing on, and it's because it's heaving when there is. But that's a lovely, pretty complete.
So I love
castle.
it, but it was reconstructed in the Victorian period. So I love it for what it is. Same for Warwick Castle as well, which is
no, that's ruined. Sorry, it is.
Warwick Castle.
There's too much stuff
I do love it, but it is very touristy now.
Yeah, it's not.
But in Wales, I'd also say you've got Caerphilly, you've got what's the one up near?
Name Welsh castles for us.
Raglan.
Like our brains are going completely blank.
Yeah, Raglan.
There's loads of
Beaumaris, that's it. Beaumaris is
Okay, yeah.
awesome. That's up near Anglesey, I think, isn't it? But yeah. Anyway, so next questions.
Okay, so forgive me, Raphael Bischoff 8524. German viewer here. Heard you refer to some types of swords as Messer, which is German for knife. Interested in what other German terms you are using.
Well, so it should be Langmesser, but all of us Anglos, non-native German speakers refer to it as a Messer. I know it's knife.
Oh my God.
So this.
Whoa, you're gonna knock kittens off your lap.
This is a fascine Messer. So in other words, pioneer's sword for making fascines.
The kittens did not
which
like that
interestingly
one.
also gives us the word fascist, but let's not go down that route. But
no politics.
Because fascines were the symbol of fascism. But anyway, let's not drift into 20th century. Yeah, Messer. We say Langmesser, Langersmesser, I guess. Funnily enough, as you're a German viewer, did you know I'm part German?
Yes, that's
but I can't speak German.
16th? An 8th?
I'm a 16th Hessian, specifically. So yes, there we go. I'm mostly English and Scottish, incidentally. And I'm sure that we have some Scottish viewers. If you're a Scottish viewer, post in the comments. My Scottish part is predominantly from Glasgow and Ayrshire. And my great-great-granddad was the chief of Glasgow Police. So there we go. I'm a proper Ayrshire lad. According to my DNA, I'm 25% Scottish, although on paper I'm slightly less than that. But there we go. And you're a little bit Scottish as well, aren't you? You're mostly English and a little bit Scottish.
Am I?
Yeah.
I think I was a bit Scandinavian.
No, that's disappeared now. They've updated
No, it's still,
but
it
it's
was
small.
still there.
But you're more Scottish, I think.
I don't remember being Scottish. It's hard to say. I look back on 23andMe.
Oh yeah, Conway! Oh my God,
Yeah.
Conway Castle's amazing. The most amazing thing about Conway. So our friends at the Night Shop are based in Conway, of course, and we've stayed there. And the most amazing thing about Conway, if you're in Wales, go and visit Conway up in the north. Is the wall, is the fact that the wall's still fully around the blooming town. And that's what a lot of people don't realise, because in usually the kind of 17th, 18th centuries, a lot of the walls that were around medieval cities in England and Wales and Scotland were knocked down because the towns got bigger and they needed to expand the towns. And so, like somewhere like Winchester, for example, Winchester had this amazing wall around the city, and they knocked it down, and all you've got now is the gate remaining. You don't, and same thing with Salisbury as well. So you don't really have much of the surrounding wall. London, even we've got a bit of London wall, but not much. So yeah, Conway, the castle's amazing, but actually, statistically, the town wall is even more amazing.
We went to a wedding somewhere that had a really cool old wall around it. Where was that?
I can't remember, but that was in Wales as well.
Yeah.
Wales is, I mean, if you're from outside the UK and you want to see castles, go to Wales. Welsh people, lovely.
Also,
the
just go to
countryside,
Wales,
lovely.
it's gorgeous and
Also,
lovely.
Wales is amazing because it's got less people, okay? The UK is really densely populated. Not as much as the Netherlands, but really densely populated. We've got the same population as France in almost half the land surface of France. Hence, land here is really expensive. But Wales has only got 3 million people. Like London is nearly 10 million people now. It's like 9 point something million. It's ludicrous. But Wales has only got 3 million people.
We've got another super chat. Thank you very much for your super chat, Ringo D9. Hi Matt, when will the new reproductions by you be released? Can't wait for the rapier. Also, will we be seeing some side sword with finger rings and a connecting side ring, early 15th century style, or any side swords at all?
So, thank you very much for the super chat. So, the new Royal Armouries ones will be released quite soon. I'm sorry I can't be more specific on that. In reality, it'll probably be spring 26 now, because there are a couple of changes required to a couple of them, which will require another prototype on one of them. And because they all get released at the same time, unfortunately, the changes required to the rapier, as it happens, is holding back the release of the other two. Probably. But as for my own line with Windless, the Elements line, they are going to be coming out sooner than that. And will there be a side sword in? Yes, in due course, although it's not one that we've worked on yet. So I do have that penciled in, 100%. I did a side sword with LK Chen, the Rebaldo, which is an early style one. I highly recommend that sword. It's really good, actually. LK Chen do the blades fantastically. But yeah, there will be a later period side sword. I don't know that I'll do another 15th. Well, I might do a late 15th century side sword, but I'm not going to do another early 15th century side sword. And I'm more tempted to do an early 16th century side sword that correlates to Manciolino and Marozzo. I hope that answers the question. But yeah.
So I was distracted by trying to remember how
More
to pronounce
questions.
what Dom Jones has written, but I believe it's Dioconvow, but I'm not sure. So tell me how close to remembering how to pronounce Welsh words.
It's funny that you read that as
such a long
Dom
time.
Jones of Wales, because I'd read it as Domgenes, a Greek hero from myth and legend. Domgenes. Oh no, it's Dom Jones.
An equally strong and excellent name.
Sorry, we're just reading.
Sorry, we're now reading comments, which is not terribly helpful.
Have we missed any super chats?
I don't think. Please do tell me in the chat if I've missed any of them out. I am trying to keep an eye on them.
Oh, hold on. Tactical katana. I see tactical katana and my eyes stop scrolling. So, Kobanix says, Matt, do you think tactical katanas improve design over tradition? Well, by what? It depends. By what? In what context? So fundamentally, yes, actually. So, you know, obviously I love traditional swords, and my first interest in sword design is in what was done before and why did they do it like that, and how can we reconstruct and learn from history. So I'm always looking backwards. But that's not to say I don't sometimes think about modern tactical weapons. I do. Particularly, I've not created any of these, but I have actually come up with some modern military knife designs, which one day I might get made. And I do know people actually make knives for the military. I can't go into any more detail than that on that topic for perhaps obvious reasons. But
well done.
But yes, I have thought about tactical katanas. And can you make something that would be more durable, usable for more of a greater variety of tasks, is in a more durable and easily wearable scabbard, is weatherproof? Yes, all of those things. I could absolutely design you a modern warfare wakizashi or katana that could be worn and carried in a modern war zone and would be useful as a tool and a weapon and all sorts of things. Yes, that's the basic answer. And I think that would be really fun to do. It would probably be highly illegal in the UK.
Says, why aren't there more reproductions of early basket hilts when they still had quillons? I don't know. That's a great question. There should be more.
As with all these things, it comes down to market. So when we talk,
I'm a market.
when we talk about reproductions, you have to realise that any modern manufacturer has to go, well, how many units of these can we shift? And unfortunately, there's lots of things I would love to replicate, but I know that there are only 20 other people in the world that would actually want to buy them. I might be wrong. Now, I've got to say, I took a couple of risks with the Royal Armouries line in choosing what to reproduce, and there's been some surprises. So I thought that the Cinque Dea would be popular, but the Cinque Dea wildly exceeded our expectations and has been a really popular, I think possibly the most popular sword that we did in the Royal Armouries line. I think largely because there were no other off-the-shelf good reproductions of Cinque Dea. They were all terrible. So we've done, not to say you can get a custom one, you could get a really good custom one, but you couldn't get an off-the-shelf, order it now, get it in 2 weeks. And so, yeah, so sometimes you don't know what's going to be popular. Would an early basket help be popular? I don't honestly know. Lucy's biased because she came from the background of doing George Silver, so...
Draven86 asks if you would mind grabbing one of your katanas behind you for them to have a look at. I can try and move Arlo off his lap.
The problem is
I
we're
can
pinned
put
here,
Tango on
yes,
your lap, and
so
I can get...
will. Yeah. So go on. You take Arlo off my lap, so I can move around.
Hang on.
So, I'll take this one. So
I'll put him back on again afterwards, so he's not too sad.
So this is. I'll stay back here because you might be able to see me a bit better. So this is one that I actually imported from Japan, and it's got.
Now I've got 2 kittens.
Edo period, so 19th century suka. Well, basically all of the fixtures and fittings. The cats have now stolen my seat. But the blade on it dates to the late 1500s. This is a 16th century blade. I don't have all of the details with me, but it's got honorumi, I think they're called. So it's got the essentially chiseled, incised motifs on the blade and on both sides. There we go. And it's relatively long as well. It's about, if I remember correctly, it's about 29.5-inch nagasa or blade length. So it's really, really, I mean, that's no question. On my wall, that's the nicest Japanese sword I own. In fact, I do own a more historically important Japanese sword, but I can't show that to you right now, I'm afraid. But yeah, I also got this one. This one could do with restoration. This is a 17th century blade, but that actually, believe it or not, came out of someone's attic, or loft as we'd call it, and it was covered in paint, and I've been gradually cleaning the paint off, and that's again, it's signed, and that's a 17th century sword. One that could really benefit from a professional repolish, although it's looked quite bright and clean. You can't see the Hammond very clearly on this particular sword, but yeah, those are my 2 best. That's the reason they're on the wall. They're the 2 best Japanese swords.
And they can cut through a tank.
Not in the 17th century they can't, because it hasn't been invented yet. My chair's now been taken by 2 cats.
He doesn't have a chair anymore. It's just, shall I?
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
Do you want to sit back down again? Cause
yeah, go on.
You'll have to sit quickly because then they'll want to go.
You know, I have got other, for those of you
You're going to have to sit on your chair quickly.
I've got quite a few wakasashis as well, which are not usually on camera because they're on shelves up to the side up here. But anyway, I'll put that back. Yeah, I went through a period
he's got his nails out.
I went through a period of sort of collecting quite a few Japanese things. I don't collect a lot of Japanese swords, and I don't deal in them very often because it's a very complex field, and there are specialists for that. I tend to focus on European and Indo-Persian to some extent as well.
Dom Jones is going to change his name to the hero.
Dom Janese.
We're all pretty happy. And Jack likes the look of our kittens. Have you not met our kittens, Jack? Come and see our kittens.
Hi, Jack.
You.
Hi, Jack. So Ringo D9, thank you for the super chat, has said, I've had your Rebellion for some time now and it's amazing. Oh, brilliant. That's really good to hear. Because do you know what? I've got it. I think it's really, really good sword. I was super happy how it turned out. And it's possible that, I can't really say much about this, but it's possible I might be working with another manufacturer in China, potentially, to maybe look at some other replicas as well. But that's very early days, so I can't really say much more about that for now. But yeah, unfortunately, other simple-ish complex hilted side swords are either by Albion or Arms and Armour, i.e. too expensive to import to EU, yes. So the Windless line will come sharp, yes, absolutely, yes. So you asked if the Windless swords through my line will come sharp. Yes, they will. That's the answer. And I've been quite adamant about that. And, you know, Windless can make things sharp. There was a myth going around for a few years that Windless didn't export sharps because of the laws in India. In fact, there are laws in India. You have to apply for a permit to export sharp swords because they're classed as weapons. But Windless has this. So Windless can export sharps, and they're increasingly doing so. It's just that the market, as it was 30 years ago, actually wasn't asking for sharps. They were asking for, you know, essentially not blunts as in a reenactment blunt, but they didn't have to be sharpened. People weren't necessarily buying them for cutting with. So they were just in the habit of making them blunt. And that's what they did. But yeah. Right. Oh, so Jack asked, are the padded bowie knives you're working on going to be available to buy? In short, yes, in due course, but that's a little bit further off. So I don't know when. I'm not a big fan instantly. I know some people might mention there are rubber bowie knives, and I'm not really a big fan of those because they tend to be quite floppy for thrusting. You can't really block with them because they're too floppy, and they still hit fairly hard. And because they're rubbery, if you're just in t-shirts, rubber can give you a really nasty friction burn. So I'm not really a fan of the rubber bowie knives. I'm kind of a fan of either something padded but stiff, or hard, and then you wear full sparring gear, essentially.
Robert Telstone asks, do you think we might see more reproductions of the various types or styles of winged spears? More spear videos. Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. And that's actually something I should probably put on my list of things to look at. So Windless and I have talked about polearms quite a bit. The problem with polearms is they're not as commercial as swords and daggers are, because you can't sell them as a complete object on the shaft because you can't ship them anywhere. So we would have to sell the polearm heads just by themselves. Now the problem with a lot of medieval polearms, not all, is that they tend to have quite long langets attached to the head. So you're selling this sort of weird object that requires quite a lot of fitting to get it fitted to a shaft. It's not a question of simply getting a shaft and jamming it into a socket. You have to sort of cut slots for the langets and taper the end of the shaft at the right angle, all this kind of stuff. So commercially, they're a slightly tricky thing to sell, essentially, or market. But they're certainly easy enough to make. So I think that, yes, I actually, both within the Royal Armouries line and outside of the Royal Armouries line, so one of the things I've actually done at the Royal Armouries is that I've actually taken a lot of photographs and measurements of things which we haven't reproduced, and we kind of have them in the sideline to, like, we could reproduce them. And one of those things is some of the pole weapons. Yasin, I don't know, Yasin, if you ever watch this video, at the Royal Armouries, so he's the curator of Edge Weapons there. We went down in the store and he got out a series of pole weapons, which I have all the required information for to replicate. It's just a question of whether it's commercially worth replicating them or not. But yeah, so watch this space, I guess, is the answer there. Dora the Exploder, excellent name, 286, says, unboxing videos, been a while and I always enjoy watching them.
So
we've not unboxed for a long time.
But excuse me, I just got attacked by a cat. By a weird coincidence,
is there things for us to unbox?
I had 2 large boxes delivered today. So I
Coming
actually
soon.
had I bought a bunch of stuff in auction, and I collected some stuff on behalf of one of my friends as well. So I've got 2 boxes full of 8 swords, I think.
Have they each got 8 swords, or are there 2
I think there's
boxes,
4.
there's
I think
8 in
yeah, I
total?
think there's 4 swords in each. So yes, there might be an unboxing video. If not those, then maybe something else soon. I noticed that Jordan Thomas, are you Welsh, Jordan Thomas? Let us know.
It's
Jordan
just a strong Welsh theme
quite,
today.
it's
I
quite
like
a Welsh
it.
name. Jordan Thomas says, "Are you excited about the Odyssey coming out in 2026?" I will.
What's that? What is it?
I love that the internet. I love that Lucy never knows what's going on. So like
If
the
it's
whole.
not about BJJ or crochet,
Do
I'm
you ever
probably
look
not
at?
watching it.
Do you ever look at the Schola Facebook page?
Sometimes.
Have you seen pictures of a guy in a slightly oversized black helmet? And then there was.
I saw that you put a thing with a guy who had a strange like spine down the back
Yeah.
of
So
his
that's
helmet.
so Lucy does vaguely know.
That's from an that wasn't nonsense. That was actually from a film.
So the tale of the Odyssey is
I'm
about
aware of the Odyssey, the tale.
Odysseus.
Indeed, yeah.
No, right, okay. So there's a movie coming out in 2026. There's been a lot of hype about it.
But that helmet's actually in it.
It's got Matt Damon. Can you do the Matt Damon voice?
Not on camera. It's a classic.
It's got Matt Damon as Odysseus in it, and there's been a lot of hype about it, but particularly there's been a lot of people laughing about the arms and armour. Now, I have to say, before I answer the question, because I always have to blather for a bit before I answer the question.
No.
I have to say...
My legs are going to sleep, because they're both on my legs now.
I absolutely love that the mainstream media, when I saw some of the gaming channels, social media pages start talking about the armor, and people are like complaining about the historical accuracy of the armor. I was like, yeah, well, that's amazing that it's made it onto some gaming channels. But now it's like in mainstream media, like major news sources are talking about the fact that us armor geeks are complaining about the armor in the Odyssey. They're finally hearing us. They're listening to us. We might actually get somewhere with this. So it just shows, like, people who go, "Oh, just enjoy the movie. Oh, don't complain about the helmets and blah blah blah." Eventually, we've made enough noise that some mainstream media has actually noticed
what happened
this.
is the armour got so bad that the mainstream media
The
noticed
funny thing
it.
is, actually, by other standards,
she got her claws
I
in
don't
you.
know why she's doing that to me. She's doing this into my legs at the moment. Not Lucy, the cat.
Tango.
Anyway, I think they're going to go and fight each other in a minute. Yeah. So, am I looking forward to it? Yes, I will watch it. I don't know if I'll watch it in the cinema. To be honest, I might wait until it's on Sky or whatever. But yeah, I'll definitely watch it. I like Nolan films. I love Nolan's Batman trilogy. I genuinely do, don't I?
It's not about BJJ, so I wouldn't know.
But I like them a lot more than you.
Which ones
there is
are
some
they?
BJJ
Are they
in
the
it.
ones with the kid from Third Rock from the Sun in?
Yes.
I do like those.
And Christian Bale and Tom Hardy and anyway. I do like Nolan as a director in general. I hope it's not boring. I hope it's well done. I hope it's a rollicking good film. You know, I might complain a lot about Arms and Armour, but that doesn't mean it can't be a good film. So I hope it's good, and I will watch it.
Apparently, Terrible Armour is traditional if it's Matt Damon.
That is true, as in the Last Duel, which, yeah, less said about that, the better. I still haven't watched The Last Duel. Some people have told me it's actually a good film, but, you know, there's a good example, actually, of if The Last Duel had had them in Houndskull bassinets, I probably would have watched that film. But the stuff with that helmet put me off so much that I literally didn't watch the movie. So someone like me, who should be a guaranteed audience member, was put off watching the movie by how bad the helmets were.
Apparently the ships are iffy as well, according to
the ships are Viking. They're Viking ships instead of Greek ships. But obviously it should be Mycenaean ships. So some people have reconstructed it and done it with like triremes. But would it be triremes? I don't think it would be triremes at the time of the Siege of Troy. we don't really know necessarily. I don't know.
The kittens are now washing each other, and it's adorable, but you can't see it.
Again, I try not to like rant about things that I'm not an expert in, so I'm not going to rant about the ships in the Odyssey.
Can Alex rant about the ships?
Exactly.
Well, see if Alex can come and rant about the ships
is
for
the man
us.
to rant about the ships in the Odyssey. I'm the one perhaps to rant about the swords or the helmet. I'm not the one to rant about the ships, so leave that to the expert, the ship expert.
The more you learn, the more annoying historical films get. That is entirely true. Oh, there was a question about stuff that you know about.
I've been blathering for an hour and a half. How did that happen? Time goes really quickly when I'm talking. Oh, God.
Dear. There's an insight there. Right, do you want to answer a couple more questions?
Yeah, I think a couple more questions and then we should probably let you get on with the
ask
rest
your
of
very best questions for Matt that you've always wanted to ask him.
Yeah. I noticed someone, we've scrolled away, so I don't know who you were, sorry, but someone said about a replica of a 17th century Polish szabla would be cool. That's actually on my list of things to tackle at some point. I agree. I think 17th century in general, like all over the world actually, including even in India, but all over Europe, 17th century swords, people instantly think of rapiers, but you've got things like walloons, you've got various types of basket hilt, you've got skiervona, you've got szabla, sabers of various types, Hungarian and Polish. There are a whole bunch of awesome swords from the 17th century that we lack off-the-shelf decent replicas of. And I think the main reason is because they're relatively difficult for a lot of people to make. So medieval swords, I think a lot of sword manufacturers can make a decent-ish replica of a medieval sword because you've got a simple crossguard, a simple pommel, relatively simple blade shapes. But when you get into the 17th century, you've got a bit much more difficult hilts to deal with, including wire-wrapped grips, you've got complex hilts. Sometimes blade cross-sections are more complex as well. So 17th century swords is definitely something I'm looking to spend more attention on in the replica world. Cutlass replica, I've just seen someone
My legs are going to sleep.
So cutlasses, it depends what period. So I think a 17th century, again staying on the same, a 17th century cutlass replica, yes. So in other words, a Dussac. Yes, there's a potential very big market for those, and again, it's something I've been looking at. A Sinclair hilted Dussac, something like that, a good one. As for 19th century cutlasses, probably not so much because they're widely available as antiques and not that expensive. So it depends what period. Maybe a Napoleonic figure 8 cutlass might be popular. Maybe a good one. Maybe. I have to say the original's not very well made. When you've seen a few of the original 18th century cutlasses, they are properly mass produced. Some of them are quite junk actually. So I don't know, would you make a historically accurate, not very nicely made original, or would you make the...
Sorry, I'm trying to get her prints out of you.
Yeah, so I don't know. But yeah, earlier cutlass probably.
You've got a question that I've
highlighted.
highlighted
Yes,
for
archery,
you because...
archery. I missed the archery segment. Right. Okay. That's an interesting question.
That's a really big question.
No, but it is a question I can give an answer to.
Okay,
so there's a super chat. No, I'm just going to deal with archery before I get to that super chat. So what I was going to talk about archery is, I've touched on some of it already. So I know that I need my channel to be fully rounded to feature more archery on it. So one of the things I'm going to be pledging to myself and to you for 2026 is a bit more archery content. Okay, I don't know how much more because that depends on a few logistics, but I'm going to try and have more historical archery content because it deserves more attention. And there are some brilliant archery channels, Armin Hermer and
Pole dancing archery man.
Yeah, and David the archery bard and various others, and there's some really good archery channels out there, but they don't necessarily look at a lot of the history of the bows, the arrows, the equipment, and the archery. So that's something that I can do more of, and I want to do more of. But in addition, I want to start getting back to doing a bit of archery myself, and it's something in 2026 I want to get back to shooting arrows a bit more. which will facilitate me doing more archery content as well. And luckily enough, I've got a big enough garden that I can shoot arrows in my garden. But in addition, I want to get back to doing a little bit of field
Arlo's
archery.
chewing a cable. If you just take Tango.
We've got a cat situation here. So, yeah, should we shut them out? Get rid of them.
No.
Send them out into the world. They're big enough
So
now.
Matt has a really interesting super chat.
Yeah.
XX Rasta. I was going to say all those letters individually, but
Rasta baby.
but it's got the X's at the beginning.
Oh, it's Rasta
and ends.
baby.
Yeah,
Rasta baby.
with X's. What do you think of the ethics of selling their history, especially for poorer nations? That is a really good question. That's a big question.
So, this is a big question. So, 2 bits of context I should throw in here. So, for those of you who don't know, I'm a former archaeologist. Obviously, in the world of archaeology, we have to deal with the issue that I don't know why they're randomly attacking my groin at the moment, but we have to deal with the issue that the famous memes about the British Museum, which irk me slightly because you can go to the Louvre in Paris or you can go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art and equally find things from ancient Egypt or Babylon, Assyria, whatever. Okay, so we have to deal with the ethics of things which are from places that were obtained from those places at a time when those places were at a point of disadvantage in their histories. So in some cases they were conquered, defeated nations. In some places they were being ruled over by other regimes. So just to give one example, and I'm only going to lightly touch on this, the Elgin marbles are a pretty famous example that gets discussed a lot online. And they're really difficult. The reason there isn't a simple answer to this is because, of course, at the time, Greece was being ruled over by the Ottoman Turks. So the way that they were obtained was not straightforward. Now, I'm going to leave the Elgin marbles because some people will have strong opinions on one side or the other. The other example is Egyptian artefacts. So there are Egyptian artefacts in the British Museum, for example, or the Louvre in Paris, that were purchased from Egyptians who had looted them from tombs. So there you've got several levels of complication because they were bought with money from Egyptian people who had obtained them from Egyptian tombs, and Egyptian tombs have been looted since ancient times. Okay, so there are many Egyptian tombs that were looted in the time of the ancient Egyptians, like only a few years after the people had been interred in those tombs. So it's an incredibly complicated subject, and some people would argue in some cases some of those artefacts wouldn't still exist if they hadn't been put in modern Western museums. However, I do believe that in some cases, perhaps even in many cases, some artefacts should be sent back to the places where they originate, so long as there is a safe place for them to be put. Okay, that is an incredibly divisive, politically complex, emotionally complex topic that is incredibly nuanced, and each and every example has to be taken on its own merit. Right,
yeah,
now I'll bring it round to arms and armour briefly. So, an Indian tulwar. I've got Indian swords on the wall behind me. I'm very aware of the fact that obviously Britain ruled over India during the 19th century and part of the 18th century, of various parts. That's a long bit of history. So how do I feel about an Indian tulwar in Britain now? Well, we don't know how it got here. Now, as I've featured on my channel many times, there were British people who wore tulwars. And because I study 19th century sources, it's patently clear that many Indian tulwars that were brought back by British people were purchased from Indian sword makers in the 19th century. They were literally just bought as the way as anything else would be bought. Just as the same way as a British officer would buy a sword from Wilkinson, a British officer in Lucknow in the year 1870 might purchase a sword from a sword maker in Lucknow. We literally know this happened. So the problem is we don't know how any given thing got here. Might it have been taken as booty in war? Yes. Might it have been looted? Yes. Might it have been purchased? Yes. Might it have been given as a diplomatic gift? So Japanese swords, if you look at Japanese swords in the British Museum, a lot of the Japanese swords in the British Museum were given to people like Queen Victoria or Prince Albert by Japanese dignitaries. They weren't looted from Japan. They were given as gifts by Japanese ambassadors, for example. So it's incredibly, we just never know. We never know how something got here. And, you know, a lot of my customers who buy Indian swords from me are Indian. So, you know, there's a lot of Chinese people buying antique Chinese swords and bringing them back to China. There's a lot of Indian people bringing Indian swords back to India. That's great. There's a lot of British and English antiques in America. And sometimes British or English people buy them from American museums or auctions and bring them back to Britain. So, you know, the international antique and archaeological and art market is now a global thing, and things can now be bought and transferred around the world globally. And history is history. We can't change what happened in the past. We can only acknowledge and learn from it. And I think if something's currently on the antique market, so long as there's no obvious evidence that it was looted or stolen, then we should regard it as a piece of heritage to be either put in a museum or bought and sold as any other antique is. There we go.
Mic drop. There's a question here from John and Anna, which is...
Hi, John and Anna.
Do you like our kittens? What's your favourite written account of sword combat? Can I tell you what my favourite written account of sword combat is? I'm not sure it quite counts, but it's the Hell Riders book where it's got like an amalgam of all the different like views of the charge of the Light Brigade.
I'm going to leave Lucy talking for 1 minute about Hell Riders. I just need to top up my drink. For 1 minute, you talk about Hell Riders.
There's not an awful lot left to say about Hell Riders. It's like maybe 6 or 7 different people's views that they wrote at the time of the charge of the Light Brigade on what they experienced. I think there might be some sort of views from people who had sort of different positions in the military at the time. It's really good. So if I was to pick a first person account, it's not like a treatise or anything, but it's really cool. So that was quick.
Yeah, well, I'm quick at filling my drink up. So I would say, you know, there are so many accounts in the D.A. Kinsley books, which I've written forewords for, which you can buy through Lulu Publishing. They go by various titles like Swordsman of the British Empire and all that kind of stuff. Some of those are incredibly detailed accounts, and one of my favourite of them is featuring Hodson of Hodson's Horse, whose right-hand man, incidentally, I've got the sword of behind me on the wall there, but is one of them where he's fighting during the Indian Mutiny, and he grabs an opponent's tulwar with his left hand, and his hand gets very badly cut, but he cuts down the enemy with his sword. And one of the reasons I like that so much is because it's an example of use of grabbing and grappling in a real combat account, which is something that most people studying Saber don't really do very much, but which we do in my club based on Hutton's teachings. And it's in George Silver, and in fact Hutton gets his techniques from George Silver, so there's a connection there between things that we've talked about earlier. So yeah, but honestly, there's absolutely loads. There's some very good accounts from the charge of the Light Brigade. There's some excellent ones, obviously, from the Indian Mutiny and the Sikh Wars, and the Sudan as well. The death of Fred Burnaby. Obviously sad for him, but you know, he knew what he was getting himself in for. And the death of Burnaby is quite an interesting one, because he had previously been using a shotgun in combat, but he'd switched to using a sword, and he took on a number of enemy spearmen at the Battle of El Teb, was it? I think it was. And he got killed, basically. But it's an interesting account because it has...
Spoiler.
It has various witness accounts, because various people saw it happen at the same time. And so it's interesting, a bit like a police crime report, you get to see different witness statements of the same thing.
We have some more super chats. Thank you very much again to Ringo D9. What's your favourite fencing system? I learned to fence watching your early videos a long time ago, and like weight system for late Saber specifically. Hutton.
So, I love Waite's book. And I think the strongest feature is Waite's book has the two biggest things in favour of it are his teaching of the feints, in other words, how to open up an opponent to actually hit them. number one. But number two, the fact that he's got a very solid anti-bayonet section. So he has got a good repertoire of techniques of sword versus bayonet. And if you think statistically, most people using a sword on foot in the 19th century are not going to be facing another person with a sword. They're either going to be facing someone in another part of the world who might be using their native weapons, like a sword and shield or a spear or whatever, or in Europe, they're going to be fighting someone proportionately who's most likely to have, statistically rather, most likely to have a bayonet. Because most soldiers on foot have got a rifle and bayonet, not a sword. However, despite many years of trying to love his engaging guard of high second, point down, while I do use it, it is not my preferred guard to fence from. I personally prefer to fence from terse. Now, ironically, Hutton predominantly teaches, in most of his manuals, to fence from medium. And I'm not a big fan of medium either. So I am sort of halfway between weight, Hutton's The Swordsman, which is a brilliant manual, and other things. There's some good French and Italian manuals, and I might possibly be delving a little bit deeper into some of the French stuff, actually, because French and British sabre goes together very well. British military sabre is almost the same in most regards as French military sabre. It's essentially a French sabre system. Yeah. Okay.
Firstly, can we be nice to each other in the chat, please? Even if we don't agree with what people are asking or saying. So, another super chat question is, a creative use would potentially be if you eventually use AI to help you consolidate your own videos into historical arms combat treatise. At the moment, large language models don't have the capacity to accurately do that sort of thing, but if there was a way to magically take all of Matt's content and make it into one thing, then that is a cool hypothetical. But at the moment, as far as my understanding
don't
is...
Move. Yeah, so I just don't scroll for a second. So I don't actually have any strong opinions on that. My knowledge of AI software and everything else is minimum. I defer to Lucy on that kind of stuff because that's more her kind of field of knowledge. Possibly, yes. I've got to be completely honest with you. One of the things that I know that is already here is AI video editing. Now, for anyone who does anything even remotely similar to, sorry, could you not scroll away? Could you go back? Sorry, go back up. There we go. Just don't scroll. For anyone who does video editing, you know it's hugely time consuming, and it would make my life a lot easier if I could just slap my SD card into the computer and with a couple of clicks leave the computer to edit my video. Now, obviously, inserting the images that I want and all this kind of stuff, but for at least to a basic level, if there was some kind of AI thing that would reduce the amount of time it takes me, that would be great. Right, so on to another question. Thank you for the super chat, though. Stop scrolling!
What's the next super chat question?
No, there's a question here. So, Peter Christensen 9695 says, somebody please digitise Richard Deller's The British Cavalry Sword. I 100% agree. It's a crying shame that that book is not more widely available to more people. It's a really, really valuable source. Unfortunately, much like Toby Capwell's books, these fringe interest small production run books, it's very difficult to finance them. And usually once they've done one production run, you can't justify doing another edition. So, yeah, they need to be digitised so that they're more widely available to more people, 100%.
You have another super chat.
So Jason Konopinski says, 17th century Polish Shabla. Yes, this excites me so much. That's really good. Yeah, I think it needs to be done. And, you know, Polish sabre is such an iconic thing historically. And it's, like I said, it's a really interesting, the 17th century is a really interesting period of history for swords. And you've got this massive diversity of swords. You know, like I say, you've got rapiers and things like conchas, estocks at one end of the spectrum. You've got shablas and dusak at the other end of the spectrum. You've got basket-hilt broadsword and backswords in the middle. more people need to get into the 17th century. It's really a shame, actually, we don't have more treatises that are non-rapier for the 17th century. I wish we had more sources for the use of things like schiavona and basket hilts in the 17th century. We don't actually have very much. We've got a lot of rapier stuff, but not much aside. But yeah.
Okay, we've probably got time for like 2 more questions. So, do you have a view?
What degree are you highlighting that one?
Yeah.
Last Will 3557 says, what degrees do you have, Matt? A BA in archaeology? Yes, a BA Hons in archaeology from UCL, graduated year 2000. I would have liked to do a master's and a PhD, but for various reasons I didn't. I just went out to work. But there we go. Sometimes you've got bills to pay.
Alfred Many Fives says, have either of you tried boxing or the like? I've only fenced once, but I feel like there's bare bones similarity. So I've done a tiny bit of pugilism, but like we talked about earlier, but mostly my background is sort of wrestling, BJJ, karate, many years ago. But have you done any boxing?
So funnily enough, I was about to say no, but I actually did do a little bit of pugilism when I used to train with Terry Brown in the late 90s.
Wow.
So yeah, so
Old
back
school.
Yeah. So I did do a little bit of pugilism. I did kung fu. I don't really know that I would say that counts, but I did kung fu for a couple of years. I loved it, but we didn't really do. We never put gloves on and did sparring. So
No.
yeah.
There is a boxing gym where I do BJJ, so it's like a boxing gym, BJJ mats. But I just really don't like being punched in the face. So,
see, ironically,
despite it looking fun, I wouldn't. It's not my cup of tea.
I have punched quite a few people, and I have been punched quite a few times, but
It's not fun, man.
I've never studied the art.
Studied the art of face punching. Okay, you have one more question. Choose it from this selection of things.
I have to say, so before we do, just thank you. We've had up to about 200 people join this, and with 30 minutes pre-notice, I'm really flattered by that. So thank you so much for joining us. It's only a couple of hours for us now until New Year, so I want to reiterate what I said at the beginning of this. Wish you all a Happy New Year. I hope that for some of you, this has been a welcome, hangout, company. I'm sorry that we haven't done this sooner. At various points, we talked about doing a live stream.
I really thought we had done it at some point in the past year,
things have just run away with us a bit this year. There's been a lot going on, and I know it's the same for lots of you as well. And I will try to do a few more live streams in this coming year, because I genuinely enjoy doing them, because it's the closest thing that I get to talking to you as a group, and it's really nice actually. And these days we don't go to massive New Year's Eve parties. We don't go clubbing or we used to have a lot of house parties back in the day, didn't we? And one where
we're very old.
One
now.
where the house next to us caught on fire. That was interesting.
Our friend got fire sickness. It was
the
it was
fire
terrible.
brigades turned up and everything. But yeah, so we don't do any of that anymore because we're getting older and we like to go to bed.
You can't play Minecraft at people's parties; it offends them. So,
hanging out with you guys makes us feel like it's not just another evening, but something a little bit different. I know that it's the same for a lot of you. You might be by yourselves, or you might be just there with your partner or your cat or your dog or whoever. I'm glad that there are a couple of hundred of you who wanted to hang out with us. But yeah, so let's look at a final couple of questions, shall we? Let's look at
optimistic.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just scroll up. Oh, that's a big question. This is a great question. If you could
just briefly, a number of people have mentioned.
He doesn't talk very often, so it's important that he interjects.
A number of people have mentioned tactical katanas, and that I need to do this. Maybe I will. Maybe it could be fun.
That might say ham on toast, and I'm sorry if it doesn't. 8956. If you could have a fantasy sword made into a functional replica, which would you choose?
Oh, that's a brilliant question.
Sword.
So,
Lion's sword. Lion's sword.
Jamonto. No, Jamonto. No. Jam on toast. Jam
Jam
on toast.
toast.
It's jam on toast.
Yeah,
I like how you made it Spanish. Hamon.
toast.
Hamon toast. Hamon.
I did Spanish at GCSE, you know.
Hamon.
But Lion's sword, if I could have a fantasy sword.
So jam on toast.
Or the Sword of Truth from the Sword of Truth series.
So if I could have a fantasy sword made... you scroll away. If I could have...
You don't need to still see the question.
If I could have fantasy sword... Oh! So there's one that I reckon most of you won't have thought of. So I'm quite a fan of the movie Legend with Tom Cruise. And I always loved the sword that Tim Curry as Satan, I don't know what they name her as in that movie, but the devil, the massive longsword he uses in Legend, I just loved it. But there are some other really cool swords. Lionel's sword, the sword of omens. The sword of omens.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. The problem is with the sword of omens, and I know there has been a replica made of it. The problem is it's an expanding and changing shape sword because the crossguard goes up.
And the question was a functional version. Imagine that. That would be too cool.
Oh my God.
Tell Todd he has to make one.
Concealed carry. Where I can go, can you imagine in the street? Thunder! Thunder! Thunder!
Concealed carry.
It would be so illegal. So illegal. But you could do it in your garden.
Can we convince Todd to make one?
Oh my God, an expanding... Yeah, so Sword of Omens, I do love Thundercats, it must be said.
Would it give you sight beyond sight?
Who's your favourite character in Thundercats? You're going to say Panthro, aren't you? Because he's the most like Vin Diesel.
I didn't like Panthro at all.
Oh, okay. He's a bit surly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he can fix cars. Doesn't anyone like a guy that can fix cars? I don't know about you guys, but for me,
when I used to watch it when I was a kid, so I liked the kid characters. Kit and Kat,
Wily
and
Kit
Snuff.
and Wily Cat.
Yeah.
So Tigra was always my favourite.
No, yes.
Tigra's badass.
Tigra's the coolest.
But also Jaga. Jaga as well.
No,
He's the kind
wrong.
of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Anyway,
No.
Other fantasy swords. So I love the swords from Conan the Barbarian, which is probably the best fantasy film of all time. Ooh, controversial. One of the best films of all time.
It's not controversial.
So funnily enough, I always preferred, I've said this in videos before, but I've always preferred his father's sword to the Atlantean
Does a
sword.
lightsaber count? Because
Nah,
Dora
it's
the
not-
Explorer
it's not a
says
sword.
lightsaber.
It's a gun.
It's got the word.
Lightsaber's a gun.
Whoa. Back it up. On what grounds do you say a lightsaber is a gun?
Because
it doesn't projectile. A gun is projectile.
It does. It shoots plasma. It shoots the plasma beam. It's a gun.
But for a limited...
Yes, it's a short-range gun.
I'm going to have to give this a lot of consideration. I'll let you know next year.
The lightsaber's a gun.
Lightsaber is not a gun.
Or is it a torch? It's a torch. It's not a sword, though. It's got no edge. So the father's sword, but I actually love Valeria's sword and Subutai's sword. They both. I think Valeria's sword in Conan the Barbarian is
So
a
I'm still
gorgeous
laughing
sword.
at ham on toast.
Hamon.
Hamon.
Hamon. Other fantasy
Chitara. Fair. Yeah.
swords. I don't really like any of the swords in Game of Thrones.
I think we may have let this go on too long.
Oh no! Oh, Peter Johnson's sword in
Is
House
a
of the
flare a
Dragon.
gun? Great question. Is a flare a gun?
Oh yeah, Dequitem. Yes, of course. So Dequitem, again, Leonard from Dequitem and I have also talked about collaborating, and at some point we will. So yes, he's another one of the many YouTubers who at some point I will collaborate with. But yes.
Thank you very much for the super chat. I'm going to butcher your username now. Luna is a sipita. But thank you very much and Happy New Year to you too. And I'm really sorry for not being able to say your username. Okay, you can have one more.
One more question. Oh, Excalibur. So this is the bonus. Yes. My God, I loved Excalibur as a teenager. I watched it on over and over and over again. I know it's not your cup of tea, but yes, the Excalibur sword from the eponymous Excalibur, which I've actually held one of because they made I don't know how many actually, but they made a few swords for the movie, as they usually do. And I met someone who owned one of them and I got to hold it, and it was a very nice sword. Yes. Right. Last question. Come on, come on. Let's the Kurgan sword from Highlander might be cool. Yeah, I wouldn't trust it. It plugs together. It's like a Lego sword. I also think the crossguard's really ugly.
It's not a sword that Klingons have, a batleth.
No, they're horrible.
That'd be so. But if it was, you could make it functional.
I know that I've argued that it's a good weapon, but I think they look horrible. Have you tried Black Fencer's steel sparring longswords? I haven't, but I've heard they're pretty good, but I haven't tried them.
Was that your last question? That was very quick.
I call my ex Chitara.
Do you want one more question?
Yeah, I'm waiting for the snake dagger. Yeah, I've played with Windless's replica of that one.
Right. Does anyone have one last really exciting, edgy, controversial question? We're not going to answer the edgy, controversial questions. I mean, he might. But
So hold on. Extra bonus question. No sword from Lord of the Rings. Of all the swords in Lord of the Rings, which one's my favourite?
The Kittens just made a really big crash.
Which is my favourite sword in Lord of the Rings?
I don't have a favourite sword in Lord of the Rings.
Oh, probably Gandalf's actually. Yeah,
I like
probably. I can't remember what Gandalf's sword is called. I quite like the Witch King's sword actually. I'm not a big fan of. Is it Glamdring? Is that Gandalf's sword? Yeah, but anyway, Gandalf's sword probably.
Thank you very much for the super chats to Uber MXTRO Law. Happy New Year to you too, and Happy New Year to BR James 87. Thank you for the super chat.
Conan is king.
Fondling my swords and thinking of you. Conan is king. Excellent.
Glamdring, yeah, it is Glamdring.
Our cats are called Tango and Arlo.
Oh, back to Lord of the Rings for a second. The Rohan swords. So like Eomer's sword is really cool, and I like when it falls out the scabbard in that blooper.
You're not allowed to answer the most recent question, whether you will continue to be Matt Easton.
Right. Okay, we should probably wrap it up there. I've done a series of extra questions.
Your last question was many questions long. That was
yeah.
good. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been really, really good. We're going to go and eat pizza and watch World's Strongest Man
now. No, now someone might spoil it.
Yeah. Anyway, bless you all. Have a great New Year's. Wishing you all the best. Thank you so much for all of your questions. Obviously, the super chats.
And I'm sorry we can't answer all of them. I do try my best to pick them out.
And but all of your questions, much appreciated. It's been fantastic having you all here. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe, and I will see you in the new year.